friends. We're talking about all things June 15th in the 90s. Starting off in 1990, Dick Tracy premieres in theaters. The comic strip detective finds his life vastly complicated when Breathless Mahoney makes advances towards him while he is trying to battle Big Boy Caprice's United Mob. Directed by Warren Beatty, starring Warren Beatty, Al Pacino, Madonna, Glenn Headley, and Charlie Corsmo, amongst others.
Yeah. And I'm gonna start this off. I've already said it in conversation, but this movie I did not appreciate as a child. I know it's an unpopular opinion, but for whatever reason, didn't clock it. And as an adult, love this movie. This is fantastic cinema.
And I feel like it holds up, man. We've talked about this off air, but like the primary colors, the use of it, and you really didn't see too many deviations from that, man. You saw some purple, but I think it would be a hard purple. Like all of the colors were solid colors. And just like the neo noir 1930s 40s era, I've always had an appreciation for that kind of stuff. When you have a radio announcer that talks like Gene Okerlund or something, you know what I mean?
Mm. It's got that little beeping sound before the news, like beep 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 beep. This just in: Dick Tracy just slapped a woman in the face. Stuff
Or
like
even better, Don Adams from Get Smart. They talk like that.
that.
Yeah.
Would you
What I've always
believe it?
wondered was if Dick Tracy, if they translated it into like real life, what is it like if when he's not on a case? Does Tess have access to his, walkie-talkie where it's like, calling Dick Tracy, we need like eggs and milk, and it's like, I'm on my way. Do they abuse that? Because you figure if he's on lunch, so like, Tracy, come in, Tracy here. Yeah, I can't find where you put the W9s at the station. Can you tell me? Like, I feel like, yeah, they would have kind of abused it a little bit, but I don't know.
Tracy, did you eat that last bagel that was on the table? Because that was mine.
Calling Dick Tracy. You know what, they did a good job. We talked about this too offline, but the like you said, the colors to make it feel like a comic book. They did that right from the beginning, and we mentioned that they might have taken some cues from Batman and things like that, because it really does feel, I think, more than any movie I've seen, like the comic book. It feels just like the comic books. You know what I mean? Just the bright colors and the characters, and I mean, for 1990. I mean, they knocked it out of the park, and it's gritty. It's like, it's not cheesy, it's violent. You can, as an adult, like I still love watching it.
And it's over the top. Everything about it's over the top. They made the villains like I didn't read the comic book, but I'm assuming like Flat Top sort of kind of looks like the guy they created with the prosthetics, and that's another thing that they did is they didn't just like name some regular looking tough guy, flat top and give him a cool haircut. They made like crazy facial prosthetics for these guys to set them apart. It's like every gangster gets uglier as you go through this movie. It's crazy.
Oh yeah, yeah, way over the top. I mean, even like Big Boy's character with like the hump and everything like that. Like they did so much detail, and they did and the colors and the cars. Like, I mean, they nailed it. And that cast too is no joke. I mean, we talked about this, but everything from Warren Beatty to Dick Van Dyke and Al Pacino and
Van Dyke. Yeah.
And they're like
he
small
was
characters. It's like, hey, I need somebody to come in and play 5 seconds in a background. Okay, let me get Paul Sorvino. We'll throw him in some makeup. And it's just like, that's a legendary actor, and he's just in it for a little bit. And it's crazy.
Yeah. And James
if you think
Caan, he's
about
in there
it,
for one
like,
scene.
Like all of those people that y'all name, they are crushing it around this time too. James Caan and Kathy Bates around this time, they were in Misery. Paul Sorvino, wasn't he one of the guys in Goodfellas?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
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 Al
And the
Pacino, I'm
Italian.
sure he
Dustin
was doing
Hoffman
something.
was in it. I
Yeah.
mean,
Dustin
Madonna.
Hoffman, Madonna, shout out to early 90s Madonna. Like she knew how to sexy. Like that was
oh yeah. And she did the Vogue album from that movie. Like the song Vogue was on that album. That was a huge like album for her. Like the whole Dick Tracy thing, really. I mean, she was definitely already on the map, but that really kicked off the 90s Madonna. Like Dick Tracy gave her like an extra layer there.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing.
Especially the acting. Like, she doesn't act a lot. And I know there's probably some people will say she sucks at acting, but I mean, she's kind of playing herself like a sex pot singer, but it's that 50s, like, songstress girl at the piano, like singing cocktail music to dudes, for tips and stuff. I mean, just annihilates it. She is
Oh
sexy as
yeah.
hell. Madonna.
Sooner or later, you're gonna be mine. You know what's cool is it kind of piggybacked off of Roger Rabbit, where you had Jessica Rabbit doing the sexy, sultry,
Yeah.
uh,
The Vixen.
jazz club thing, and then Dick Tracy comes on, and it's Madonna, and you're like, wow, like I couldn't think of anybody better to play her in
Especially at the
1990.
time. Yeah, at the time, no.
Yeah.
It was like this is it. And she kills it. But as like to me, one thing that's like Steve said, the style and just to piggyback on that, like the backgrounds, the visuals that they put in that aren't just like great looking visual movie shots, which this movie's filled with. They'll show like long shots, and it's some kind of combination of animation, painted backdrops, whatever they were doing in the 90s for special effects. Like this was the top of the game because the cityscapes, and when they'll zoom into like what you think is a painting and there's a moving like subway car or something in it, it just looks so good. It adds to the movie so much. Like there's no need to suspend your disbelief. You believe whatever this city is like totally exists in this weird like noirish fashion.
Yeah,
There was no downtown.
No.
no, no, there's no, and you know what they do too, which is cool, just to crowbar in what you said about like the backgrounds, is they take you just through so many rides. Like at one point they're on the docks and there's like the big ocean liners behind them, and then you're in like an opera, and you're like, okay, this is a cool set. They're out at an opera, and then they're in the the garage with the shootout, and they jump all around. They take you to the greenhouse and
Yeah.
to the club and the station and the kid and the junkyard and the diner. And it's like all those sets, they didn't half-ass anything. They're like all the detail in there. It's just, it's like a beautiful film to watch visually.
Yeah, I wonder I didn't see who the DP was, but whoever that was should have won a huge award for this. And the even like when they're outside, I was watching the beginning of it before I got onto this meeting, and like they'll be in like a dark street, but there's like windows that have red light pouring out of them and stuff, just to sort of add to that weird like noirish thing. And it's just whoever the DP was really made what probably could have been a shitty movie like really fucking good. Like he added a lot of value to this.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Everybody,
And,
man.
and I didn't realize this. I just looked this up, but it won an Oscar for best art direction and best makeup.
I
Best
mean,
makeup, yeah.
So
deservedly so for both
yeah,
Oscars for
The
sure.
first comic book movie to win an Oscar, I believe.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, and with all the
It,
comic
it
book
would have
movies
to
and
be.
people talking about this shit, you'd think that more people would point to this. Like, again, I didn't appreciate this, so it wasn't really on my radar. But, like, just if you go back, like, this has to be one of the top three comic book movies of all time. And that's saying a lot because I love comic book movies. So,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. If you, because you're a fan, like you get it. You guys get it. If that's in your three in the whole like sphere of things, it says a
And
lot. Do you think it's under appreciated or like ahead of its time?
severely,
Yeah,
man.
both of
And I
those
mean,
things.
you don't
the
hear
fact
about it a
that
lot.
Disney owns that, what, even though Warren Beatty owns the rights, does Disney have any say in this? How does that play out?
I'm not sure. I figure no. So what happened? What I understand was he bought the rights from Chester Gould, who was the original creator, and he has Warren Beatty. I mean, has like absolute rights, and then he produced it. Disney produced it with him having the rights to it. But I think from my understanding, is he owns them and he's not doing anything with them. The only stipulation is he has to release something as Dick Tracy every 10 years to keep the rights. That was like provisionally in the contract. So if you Google Warren Beatty, Dick Tracy, he has all these like weird 5-10 minute shorts on YouTube that he's in character, like talking just so he can like keep the rights. But I think, yeah, I don't think anyone else can do that until he passes, because with all the comic book movies they made and with Disney doing all their, new material, I mean, Dick Tracy's like an untapped market. You figured they would do something like a TV show or
Oh,
something, and they just
the
haven't.
mouse, the mouse will get a hold of it when that man passes,
Oh
because the
yeah,
mouse is infinity and O, never lost a battle, a match, a war. And so it sounds like Warren Beatty is the reason why we don't hear about it as much. He's kind of like keeping it in a closet somewhere.
Yeah.
And I remember the machine behind it. McDonald's, I remember they had a promotion for it. And like you get a large cup or a large fry, you get a peel off, and it was kind of like the whole Monopoly deal where you match a set or something like that. And I remember having the toys, and they even brought the old cartoon from out the vault that I didn't even know of until this movie came out. And where I lived in Sandusky, Ohio, like early school morning, it would be like 7 o'clock or 7:30. They would play the old like 60s, 70s Dick Tracy cartoon.
Oh, nice. I remember those too. It started off with the aerial view of like the car and everything and all the characters. Like it was fun, you know?
It
It was like
was,
that
man.
hard jaw, like
Yeah.
50s Superman like style
Yep.
cartoons and stuff. I definitely remember those.
And super racist too. I remember some of those characters from the cartoon. You're like, ooh, that's
Yeah.
that's why you're not seeing those anymore. I mean, there was like some Asian American characters where you're like,
Yep.
Those are the
I know
ones that
exactly.
got it the
Yep.
worst of the cartoons for some reason. It's like, why pick up? Why were they going after them so bad? It's weird.
yeah, yeah, everybody did, but it was yeah, those some of those characters didn't hold up. And I feel like the movie did a good job of not including, you know, stereotypes for the most part.
Well,
They kind of
you didn't have to, other than like I guess like you could say Italian, but nobody cares about Italian stereo. I think even Italians love Italian stereotypes so much they're like, yeah, whatever. But here,
forget about it.
yeah, exactly. And but here, like the villains, it's so like I think maybe that's why like the visual of these guys is so like strange and like now it's cool, but I think it scared me as a kid. Where I mean,
Yeah.
like it's those they're not even like big characters but and they're not in it that much but it's just it's such a it takes you to like it does take it to that cartoonish level is what I'm trying to say. It's like it's not unrealistic, these are real people walking around, but it's like that same like Ninja Turtles movie thing where it's
Yeah.
crazy to look at but it's a physical thing, it's a real thing and it looks cool.
Yeah, and they get you with that too. I like when I saw the movie in the theater at 9, you know, it that's a lot to take in. You're seeing all these like little face and influence and these like scary characters. Next thing you know, they're putting a guy in cement and dumping him in the river and like they're shooting up cops. And it was like it's just so much. They pack such a punch in Dick
And
Tracy with those characters. I feel like there's not a bad scene in the movie. Some might say like some of Madonna scenes they might say is a little like melodramatic, but that was the idea. But I feel like they didn't really waste any downtime because they had so many characters. They really like packed a good punch, you know, casting wise in that.
and Clark, did you have the trading cards for Dick Tracy?
I had some of
Because
them. Yeah.
this is
I
around the
had
time when like trading cards were really like starting to come.
yeah. I know you had did you have the cards?
I
Were
have the
you
Dick Tracy cards and the Turtle cards,
I
which
had the
both
turtle
like came
cards
out in
the
also.
turtle
1990.
cards, yeah.
And
But
so like that would introduce me to some of these villains. And so like when the movie came out, I remember being like just in anticipation, just I couldn't wait to see these faces.
they really tried to I mean, like you mentioned the McDonald's stuff. The marketing was no joke for this movie. I mean, they had.
Yeah.
I remember I had the action figures. We've talked about this, everything but the blank, because the blank was discontinued and they didn't. But like the action figures were everywhere. I mean, like everybody had them. They were kind of side by side with Ninja Turtles at the time.
In a way.
Yeah, and then the car they had like the police car that came with it. So I was like really into the accessories that you could buy with them because there was like some other stuff. Um, and it's weird because it came and went. Like Turtles fizzled out over a few years, but Dick Tracy, that marketing like dropped right away. It was weird. You like had everything all at once and then nothing, and you're like, oh, what happened? You know? But yeah, the between the watches and the radio, like it was no joke with those that marketing.
Plus, I'm sure they had some cool toy guns, which weren't like a problem at the time. That you could just get like a cool Tommy gun or like some cool shit that you wanted to have as a kid too. So
Oh yeah. I had a gun. I had the Dick Tracy.
I love it. I had a gun.
I had a gun. It was an Uzi. It was real. No, I had the yellow trench coat and the hat was like it wasn't plastic, but it was like the felt, like you could crumble it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the fake St. Patrick's Day hats you see. It was like that kind of material. And I had this fake gun. I don't remember if it was like Dick Tracy license, but it was heavy. It was silver and it had like silver bullets you put in. It didn't shoot anything. But I remember I brought that to Florida with my Dick Tracy thing and I forgot I had it in the bag. And and in 1990, it was a little bit more lax. If that were today, I would be in a cell.
Yeah.
But I remember the guy took it out and he was holding the gun, and my mom's like, "Give us the gun, we'll get rid of it." You know, and I got on the plane, no problem. But I was like, "It's Dick Tracy, you know, like I'm Dick Tracy. I'm trying to solve capers."
I gotta have my gun, Mom.
Give me the gun. But it was all about that, all the like action figures and stuff. You know, it was so cool.
But they back to the movie itself, like. The villain, the main villain is Big Boy Caprice, which I love that name. It's Al Pacino in heavy makeup, and like you said, when they introduce him, he's like this Al Capone figure. I compare this movie a lot to The Untouchables. It has a lot of like similarities to that.
Yeah,
and he's got that Al Capone vibe. But I do love when he's dumping some guys in cement. It's called, what do they call it? The bath or something? I just thought that was so fucking cool.
Not the bath, big boy. Not the bath. Not the bath.
That, and then he kills like a club owner and gets Madonna's club. And I love how this thuggish gangster has to micromanage choreography for a good 20 minutes of the movie. I love that.
He's real. Come on!
Like, Jesus Christ!
And he's doing the moves. He's like, "Come to the little brother, let's get more."
Hoo-ha!
He breaks 88 keys as he slams the piano cover on it.
He's like, the best piano player in town. That was stupid.
Yeah. You know what's funny about Big Boy is he is modeled after Al Capone. Like that was the idea. And you just wonder, like, was Dick Tracy supposed to be like Elliot Ness? Because you're right. When I like watch Dick Tracy, I do draw a lot of similarities to the Untouchables.
It's so close. Like he doesn't have a team. It's just him and also I do love how Dick he's a detective in this whatever city's police force. But every other cop in the city is just like, "Hey, Tracy, what's going on?" They're like little kids, like a puppy following around a big dog. Like, what are we going to do now, Dick? And he's just, you know, the only guy to actually do any police work in this town.
Right. Like
the only
Tracy
one with Yeah.
What's that?
He's the only one with the distinctive jacket. Like all the other cops, they just like,
they can't do it.
They come to me. I got the yellow coat.
The brightest code makes the rules, guys. I don't make the rules myself, okay?
Well, when he was incapacitated in jail, and they play the Back in Business montage, which is my favorite part of the movie. I just think it's so like colorful and fun. But they show like the police department going to shit. You know, like they can't do anything, and they're like hitting cops, and Tracy's just in the cell, and it's like, is he the only guy that can like arrest somebody? It was so.
I love all the montages in this because basically what this is the rise of Big Boy Caprice. He gets taken down by Dick Tracy in like the halfway point of this movie. And one of the most comically simple ways they somehow make a diversion to clear this club out that Al Pacino owns or Big Boy Caprice owns, and then sneak up into the attic and use a gigantic manual drill just to drill a hole so they can like listen in on the conversations. I love how simple all these like plot points are. It's great.
And the Wi-Fi must have been great in 1930 because when Bug Bailey's listening, there's like the radio there and then the radio on his wrist, and like no matter if they're underground or in a cellar, like everything works crystal clear. They could be at the warehouse and like everything's fine. It's talk about amazing communications in 1930 Chicago or whatever.
Everywhere I go, it's Tracy's. He's here. He's taking down my shit. Yeah.
Having a thought.
And then I love how the way they figure out they're wired is that guy just spills a little coffee and it starts dripping. And then the villains just start doing like Jerky Boys pranks where they're like, "Hey, I'm going to be down at the docks."
Big payoff at the warehouse pier. And then they get him the cement bath. If you remember that scene, after they find out the wiretap, or whatever, the radio, the microphone, they set up Tracy to go to the warehouse. And then, but do you remember he goes there and they like Tracy tries to shoot him, but he doesn't because of the cement.
Yeah.
Like muzzled his gun.
Oh yeah, yeah. He was like,
I always felt like that
reload.
scene, they like edited something in and then cut it because it's kind of a weird cut. All of a sudden, like Bug Bailey's like ready to be dumped. The guys come in, they shoot, they miss. Tracy's covered in cement, and then like it ends, and you're like, well, what happened to Bailey and the two guys and Tracy? Like somebody would have died there. It was just weird, and then it like stops. They cut somewhere else. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. Like we should have known before the villains found out. You know what I mean? Like we didn't like we I didn't know that was Dick Tracy until like probably when Blank shot the people. Like,
Right.
oh, that was Dick Tracy.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, oh, what? Why didn't? Okay, I guess we're all learning. You know, it was kind of weird. It was like a weird cut.
And
The
speaking
Blank.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna ask you, the Blank. Do you guys think that was a good? Do you prefer it the way it is, or do you think the Blank could have been its own character that wasn't? Spoiler alert: Breathless Mahoney, playing him, because I always thought the Blank.
I think it
I
was a
don't know,
cool
was like
character.
cool
So
enough. It would have been a cool character to have alone.
Yeah,
You know.
I agree. But I like the voice freaked me out a little bit. Like even so, it's like that.
You're going to sleep.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the very like hole in the neck cigarette ad voice, but
Won't even kill you, but your days are over. You're
it
like,
looks cool
what's
though.
going on?
It does.
Yeah.
The actual visual of the face looks cool, and I do like how really the no face character, their only thing is just to create chaos by making phone calls. It's like, hey, you know, you might want to go down to the docks, and then he'll call somebody else and like get them to, you know, it's very hijinksy. There's a lot of phone hijinks in this.
Yeah, a lot of prank calls. The Midway Hotel. Send somebody down, and then it's very, very orchestrated too.
The Jerky Boys would have cleaned up in whatever city this. Frank Rizzo could have just created chaos in the city.
Chaos. They would have cleaned up. They couldn't handle it.
Dick Van Dyke, man, and shout out to him. Like he's a legend. And you know, he was like the rogue district attorney, I believe.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
Dick
Fletcher.
Tracy, and they frame Dick Tracy basically in 88 Keys, played by Mandy Patinkin. Is like the accomplice. They basically frame him and make it seem like Dick Tracy killed John Fletcher.
Yeah, and also
for sure,
Van Dyke, his character to me, they do a couple shots where he really reminded me of the Penguin from the Adam West Batman. He has like the weird cigarette thing all the time, which I love from a district attorney, the evil cigarette holder. But he looks fucking crazy in this movie. Dick Van Dyke's never looked so evil.
Yeah, he does look evil, and with the glasses, and that scene in the cemetery when Big Boy's like chastising him for messing up the deal with Tracy, and he kind of turns, and yeah, he does have that. I never really thought about it that way, but he does have like a penguin vibe from the old ones.
You're not out. You're not out. When you're dead, you're out. I love that too. I love Pacino. He eats up scenery so big in this movie. It's fucking great.
Scene too, where he's like, "You're not out." He's walking. The silhouette of the city behind them and like the moonlight on their heads is such like beautiful, like chilling cinematography. That scene, like they nailed that.
Yeah,
that scene where they're all walking, you know, like all the thugs and everything. It's pretty intense.
At some point,
you
Dick Tracy
dead,
realizes,
then you out.
Like the enemy of my enemy is my enemy.
And they're like, wait, what, Dick? Or do you have fucking head injury? He's like, no, wait, the enemy of my enemy is my friend or my enemy? You know, I love that. Also, this is what I wanted to ask you guys, because I saw when I rented the movie. It's classified as a comedy whenever you rent this, like on Amazon Prime. Do you think
it really
has any I don't really classify this as a comedy. I feel like it's like an over-the-top action movie, but comedy, I don't know. There's a couple comedic moments in it, but I don't know if I classify it as such.
I have a theory about that Disney branded it as a comedy to play down a lot of the violence in there. like to make it more like comic booky, but it's there. Yeah, 100%. It's not a comedy. There are some funny scenes, but no,
Unintentionally, I
it's an
think.
action movie.
The Al
Yeah,
Pacino shit is
exactly.
funny, but like I don't think he meant it to be funny. He's just being Tony Montana in like neo noir 1930s
Hey,
fictional town.
Well, in the
oh
end, though,
yeah,
he is really funny when he like kidnaps Tess and he's like, "This is how life is," and they're going through like the El Chapo escape tunnel. He's like, "Things happen," and things, he's going through like
Yeah,
this philosophical like diatribe as he's kidnapping this woman. I love that.
you
also,
gotta
what
let him
is
know.
that thing? What is that tunnel? I mean, it's not a train thing, right? He's on because he's on like a cart. Like,
I
what
just
was
wrote
that?
El Chapo tunnel because that's really the only frame of reference I have is like a drug dealer's escape tunnel.
That's what it is. Yeah. It's just so it's so funny. I want to be caught dead in a place that permits gambling.
Yeah, hell yeah. You must have the wrong guy, Mr. Tracy. It is very Al Capone in Untouchables, where he's just like always, it's always in the front when the cops show up. Like, what are you talking? This is a private party, sir.
It is. It
You
is.
need an
Everything's
invitation to this event. And Prune Face, it's like, we know where all the villains are. It's the group of ugly ass people in really nice suits. We get it.
we know where they are, and they're all easily arrestable. They're like all in the same room at the same time. There's no discretion with Big Boy's gang.
Oh,
They're all
yeah.
just hanging out. I do
Yeah.
love that when they do like the meeting and with Spaldoni and everybody, and they're spying on them. That Big Boy kind of lays down the plan of how like the modern day mob works. Like, yo, we're all going to work together. We're all going to get, or not even not modern day, but like the Al Capone days. Like, yo, this is how the outfit, which was Capone's gang, was called. That's how they operated. Like, we all work for me. We all get a piece. That's how it is. If you don't, you're going to get whacked. And they put that early on, which adds credence to to Big Boy being like Al Capone. I mean, it's like side by side on so many levels.
Get down or lay down.
Just missing Sean Connery making racist Italian remarks constantly throughout the movie, but
What's your name before you changed it, you guinea wop?
just like a dago, bring a knife to a gunfight.
The
And shout
Chicago
out to
way.
Danny Elfman, man, who did the sound and he did the score, the same guy who did the Batman.
Danny Elfman, dude, like the '90s. I mean, we all know there's like a couple of people that like are like these people that make movie themes. I can't think of the name right now. Not choreographer, whatever it is. But this dude,
Composer, like James
yeah,
Horner and stuff like that.
composer.
Score.
Danny
Yeah.
Elfman and the guy that did the Star Wars theme. Those are the two people in the '90s. But I feel like when you
Yeah.
actually sit down and look at it, Danny Elfman had Batman. He had this. He had any Tim Burton movie that came out in the '90s.
Just about, yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
crazy to see. And like when you actually sit back, like I said, when I watch this and the movie starts and you hear that theme, I was like, man, I wonder if Danny Elfman did this. And sure enough, goddamn, he did. So
Oh yeah, yeah. And you can hear he takes a lot of cues from the Batman theme, like where on some of the bridges where they rise up, like it's almost like it's familiar if you haven't heard it before.
yeah,
It gives like an extra edge to it, which is
I
awesome.
feel like everybody did a 10, man. Like from beginning to end, the cast, the direction, the cinematography, the score. And it's just unfortunate that Disney or Warren Beatty is kind of keeping it away from the public, man. It should be
Yeah,
celebrated like how the Turtles are celebrated, like Star Wars is celebrated, all
yeah,
any of
hell
those
yeah.
Marvels.
yeah.
Um,
And it is. And it's 33 years, and that's the last thing that they really ever put out. And Dick Tracy was beloved before the movie. I mean, those comic books are from way, way back, and the cartoons. And I mean, it's just a shame that there's really. I mean, thank God the movie's as good as it is with that cast. That if they are going to do it once, they did do it right, and we have that. But there's just so much more they could do. I mean, they could do a TV series
Oh my
or a
God.
mini series, and it would be like incredible.
Make it
but you know,
contemporary. I mean, it's a detective story. You could make this in now and you could almost like change it. But even if you did it in this time period or whatever, like you want to call it like 50s or 30s or whatever it is,
Yeah,
you could totally, they try to do this with everything. Like they do Night Court remakes, do something that nobody's really, it's on their radar and catch them off guard. Like this, I feel like you could do something low budget and still have this weird, like, cool edge and style that this movie has. Because it's really just, set dressing, primary colors, and, the makeup was going to cost a lot. But I feel like
Yeah,
that's probably pretty cheap in comparison to like CG or whatever people are doing now.
But
you
yeah,
could. I
and
think
that's
they
the
could pull it
trade
off.
off. Yeah,
Yeah.
like the money that you would put in makeup, the trade off is that you have CGI, because this was one of the last films to have like actual painted uh like background, man, and that costs a lot more than just like getting on a computer and you know what I
Well, and
mean?
also like that can
Right.
go bad, especially now when you rewatch it. I watched the like one of the Aliens movies recently, and it utilizes a lot of like painted backdrops in the special effects. And in that, it is noticeable, like when they're doing something where it's like, man, this looks like fucked up. This holds up so well, and I think it is because the artistry of whoever was doing that specific special effect of like, this is some kind of green screen when they're showing like these people on docks, and there's this huge cityscape that's like sort of half animated painting. Whatever that technology is, it's like this is sort of unheralded at the time, and like especially now in the time where comic book movies are almost really the only thing being made. You'd think that this would totally be getting talked about more, on top of the fact that everyone loves the 90s so much.
Oh, I think so. Yeah,
And
I'm just so surprised that they haven't done anything with this. And
that's
it
why.
really is a revolutionary film in terms of like art direction and what they did with the resources they had in 1990. I mean, just to pull that off. And the movie, I think, was supposed to be made a lot earlier. I think Warren Beatty was trying to make it in the early 80s. And just because like things fall through or whatever, they didn't make it till 90, which like what a great movie to kick off 90, between that and Turtles and like everything else. It was just such a fun time. It was
It
like a great
was,
time to
man.
be a kid.
Turtles, Dick Tracy, Ultimate Warrior just beat Hulk Hogan. Little disappointed about that. The Bad Boys went back to back, but yeah, man, it was a good time to be a kid in 1990, man. And are you watching that
SummerSlam was
Warren
in
Beatty?
Philadelphia.
See, there you go, man. Like we got to minimize the. We love you, man.
It's okay.
Love it,
It's
man.
okay. You're from Philly. It's all right. We
You
will
can't
not hold
help
that
it.
against you. It's fine.
But
Fresh
also,
Prince, he would never do anything to stand out or hurt somebody.
And I do want to say one other
unless
thing,
you're
just
Chris
like in
Rock,
general about like movies like this in the 90s. And this also goes with like the Ninja Turtles movie. There is something, and people need to hear this now. Like CG movies are fine. I just saw the new Spider-Man movie. It was great. Love CG. But there is something about having a physical set, putting makeup on somebody like this, or like having Ninja Turtles and whatever you want to call that, makeup or whatever, costuming, and being able to light something that's physically there. It makes it look so much better. Like these people aren't believable people, but there's something about lighting them and them being in a real thing where it doesn't bother you at all. It almost like it's just like, oh, there's like these ugly fucking weirdos walking around this town. They're terrifying.
Oh,
It's
totally. Yeah.
so
And
cool.
to think about the amount of time that put in there. I mean, you read about some of the stuff on like IMDb about Dick Tracy, like Big Boy Caprice, Al Pacino's makeup took like, I don't know, 6 hours or something to get into. And Little Face was like a whole thing. I mean, even when you look at like the Batman movies, like the early ones, I mean, it took, hours to get these people ready. Like sometimes it took like 6 hours and then they'd have to stay in there. I mean, just to pull it off that way is incredible. And so much in Dick Tracy, there's like easily 15, 20 characters in that movie that required like heavy prosthetics and everything.
Or even
I mean,
small
it was
ones.
like,
Like there's a couple reporters like at the beginning when they're just like, "Hey, Dick Tracy, what do you think about Big Boy Caprice?" And he's just like, like walking through a crowd, but like one guy has like a gigantic fucking nose and stuff.
oh yeah.
Oh, it's just like everybody when they could put a prosthetic on somebody, they did it, and it's just it adds to it a little bit. You got Warren Beatty looking all handsome, and then some guy that looks like a human rat asking him questions. It's crazy.
That I forget that character's name, but he has a name. He is fun. He is like
Yeah.
the human rat.
Yeah, he looks very rat-like, so they nailed it.
Yeah, it's I can't think of his name, but yeah, they the reporter guy. It is funny. It
They
is
do
good
have
they
a
did
lot of
that.
great names in this too, like Tess's name. Tess is Dick Tracy's like love interest, and she's this pure spirit, and her last name is Trueheart. I never knew that, but that's so apropos to the character.
Yeah, Yeah, True
We haven't
Heart. Like
talked about the
she's
kid either.
Yeah, the kid we kind of glanced over, but the kid whose name is, I mean, this is somebody, his name's Charlie Korsmo, but I think he's still acting. But I
Yeah,
usually,
he retired.
okay, well,
Yeah, he's like a
usually a
lawyer or
movie
something now.
with a kid, like,
yeah,
it's like a main character. I don't, it sometimes sucks, but this kid actually nails this fucking character too. He's a tough little kid.
I think
Kind of pissed
so.
me off at first, man. It's like, dude, Dick Tracy's trying to change your life, man. You over here in
Yeah.
a shed with this dude that's beating your ass,
Yeah.
and like when they feed him, well, before they feed him, he like runs in front of a train. Only crackheads do that. That kind of pissed me off. As Dick Tracy's like chasing after him, and then like he's just like eating everything. When do we eat? When do we eat? When do we eat?
When we
Like,
when we they also took him for I felt the same way. You're like, you're ungrateful little shit. Like this is
Yeah.
Dick Tracy. He's basically like your dad now. Like smarten up.
He's taking you to buy suits, kid. You were
I
about
want to
to
wear
try,
a
you were
suit.
begging some fucking crackhead for a piece of chicken in a shack earlier. You could have a little respect.
I prefer
Clothes don't
smelling like
smell
pee
very
pee and
good.
outside.
I think Charlie Korsmo, because he was in a string of early '90s movies. He was in Hook and
Hook,
he was in a
yeah.
few other ones. He had like a good run there, and I think he nailed it as the kid. You know, he was like an unknown at the time, and they could have went. Kid roles are hard to fill, and a lot of them don't age well. But I think they did a good job with him.
Oh
Did you know
damn!
Macaulay Culkin was considered for that role, but he turned it down to be in Home Alone?
I think he chose right. You
He
know.
made the right move.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I
Catherine
don't
that's
know.
O'Hara was in it
interesting.
Charlie
though.
Korsmo kind of killing in the '90s. He was in What About Bob, which I love. Hook. And then
Yeah.
later on, right before well, not right before we graduated, but he was in Can't Hardly Wait also. So he was acting as like a
Oh,
teenager.
right. Yeah,
I think
he
he was
was in
the
that.
nerd. I think he was one of the nerds that is trying to like mess with the jocks, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
He might have been, but Charlie Korsmo, dude, just getting a lot of how much food this kid had to eat on set for those scenes though, when it's like the montage of them meeting him and eating, like this kid's eating a lot of food. And I was a fat kid and I wasn't even eating this level of
Oh,
diet.
That
he was
pork
not. He
chop
was a
looked juicy.
machine. The ice cream, and then he'd throw it, and like the chili, and
Hmm.
it was
That
just.
pork chop, man.
Donuts.
Oh,
I mean, this kid also, the blaseness of him acting like an adult, because he'll be in a diner and be like, "Hey, Dick, you want a donut?" Dick's gonna pay for the donut, kid. Like, you can't just be offering up shit that somebody else is paying for. This kid's he's
Like,
salty.
who raised
you
you?
want a
Oh,
donut?
Steve
Give
the
me a
Tramp.
coffee. Do you want a broken arm?
Yeah, right. He's trying to fucking rob the people. I mean, goddamn,
How
kid.
ungrateful. What was he eating in the orphanage? Like oatmeal? I remember thinking that was
Gruel.
disgusting.
Yeah, it's like
Is that what it was?
It's like, please, sir, can I have some more? It's that level of orphanage, you know.
Yeah.
Get out of here, kid.
One more sixpence, and I'll please have some.
What'd you bring me? But that guy that and again, I think this is why I didn't like this movie is like when Dick Tracy saves this kid's living with some like I don't even know
That's
what
Steve the
it's like,
Tramp.
yeah, okay, that's Steve the Tramp. Okay, well, Steve
That's
the
Steve the Tramp.
Tramp,
Yeah.
that guy's scary as
Steve the
fuck.
Tramp.
I don't like that.
He's no joke, and the fact that he's living in the junkyard, it wasn't like a homeless encampment off by the river. It was like the middle of like a train yard with
It was
scraps,
one
and he has like
decision
a
away.
house.
Yeah, dude.
It was,
I
And
mean,
it was a house. It was like a constructed.
was it a
shed,
house though, man? I mean, what it was
Not
a
a house.
shanty. It was like
It's-
where
it
you
was a
go ice
shanty.
fishing, basically. You know.
I feel like it was a
constructed in
shed
wood,
behind
like
a
he took
house.
the time to make it. It wasn't like a tent or he was just sleeping under a thing. It was like a poorly constructed shanty, but it was like 5 feet from the tracks. It was such a weird
just
spot to
got-
have him.
And he had like
Post-cam.
leprosy or something. He was like, dude, there was some kind of chemical because his the facial, like you gotta exfoliate or do something, sir, because the shit's fucked up.
My boy left me. All I have is my garbage can lid and my wooden plank.
Some guy whooped my ass, took my kid, and my shanty's all fucked up. I don't know. I'm gonna go kill myself. I gotta go.
We got a place
hope it
downtown
doesn't-
for guys that hit kids.
He's
I
so
love when he's-
scary, dude. He's the tramp guy.
scary.
That guy is terrifying, dude.
The video. He's the first villain. He's the first caper in the video game. I don't know if you remember the Nintendo game they had for Dick Tracy.
I do.
But he's
That
like
was
the first
extremely hard.
case. Yeah, it
Yeah.
is hard. It is hard.